Have you ever walked through a place so steeped in history, it feels like the walls themselves are alive with the memories of the past? There are places in the United States where the veil between the living and the dead seems thinner than anywhere else. Dark corners of the country where ancient spirits still linger, their stories etched into the very stones, wood, and air. This is not just a collection of ghost stories. It's a journey into the heart of America's haunted past, a voyage through 10 locations that will leave you questioning. What if the dead aren't gone at all? So settle in and let the whispers begin. At number 10, we have the cemetery of the Biltmore estate in Asheville, North Carolina. You may find more than history beneath your feet. The Biltmore estate, nestled in the rolling hills of Asheville, North Carolina, is a beautiful, sprawling mansion that looks like something out of a fairy tale. But its beauty masks a dark secret. At the foot of the estate lies a cemetery, quiet, forgotten by most, but still, it hums with the echoes of the past. It is here, in the shadow of George Washington Vanderbilt's grand home, that a young woman named Emily had her life stolen from her. Emily was a servant in the early days of the Biltmore's construction, a girl with a bright future who caught the eye of a wealthy estate worker. Their secret romance was tragically cut short when one evening, Emily was found lifeless in the garden, her life claimed by an apparent accident. But accidents don't always explain the cold touch of a hand on your shoulder when you're standing near the graves, nor do they explain the faint whispers that seem to come from the cemetery late at night. Visitors to the Biltmore Estate's cemetery have reported hearing Emily's voice calling their name, or feeling her chill presence behind them as they stand among the tombstones. The spirits of the forgotten are restless, and the past refuses to stay buried. At 9, we have the Queen Mary in Long Beach, California. Some ships were never meant to sail, and some spirits never meant to leave. Once a grand ocean liner, the Queen Mary now sits docked in Long Beach, California, a museum and hotel with a mysterious past. During its service in the 1940s, it was a troop transport ship, and rumors swirl about the number of lives lost aboard its decks. Some say the ship has never truly emptied of its passengers. The souls of the fallen still walk the halls waiting for the ship to set sail once again. One particular story is that of a young girl named Jackie. In the 1950s, she was playing with her family on board when she slipped and fell into the ship's engine room. Her parents searched desperately, but by the time they found her, it was too late. Visitors to the Queen Mary often report hearing the sound of a child's laughter echoing through the engine room. Some claim to see her, a little girl, her face pressed against the glass, staring out to sea. Her spirit, it seems, is forever trapped between the world of the living and the world of the dead, her unfinished voyage left to linger. And then there's the feeling, an overwhelming sense of cold. You might be walking alone through the ship's narrow corridors, only to feel a chill creeping up your spine, as if the very walls themselves are watching you. On 8 is the Fort Mifflin from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. War leaves scars that never heal, some even after death. Fort Mifflin sits on a small island in the Delaware River, a fort that played a significant role during the American Revolution. But the fort's role in history is not the only reason people flock to it. Fort Mifflin is home to one of the most active hauntings in the country. During the war, the fort was a bloody battleground with soldiers dying by the hundreds. One particular soldier, a young man named Samuel, was stationed at the fort, and he met his death not in battle, but during a brutal storm that sank a supply ship in the river. Samuel's body was never recovered, but he didn't leave. Over the years, visitors have reported hearing the soft sound of boots on the wooden floors, the phantom cries of soldiers calling for help, and the unmistakable feeling of being watched. On dark, moonless nights, the ghost of Samuel is said to appear by the fort's ramparts, staring out toward the river, still waiting for his supplies to arrive, though he'll never see them again. At 7, we have the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, Weston, West Virginia, a place where the mind breaks and never mends. Imagine walking through a place where the air feels thick with sorrow, where the walls still whisper the suffering of its former inhabitants. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, once a psychiatric hospital, is a place where the boundaries between life and death blur. The asylum was built in the mid-19th centuries to house the mentally ill, but as the years passed it became a place of fear and neglect. Thousands died here, often from mistreatment or abuse. One of the most tragic stories is that of a woman named Margaret, who was admitted to the asylum after suffering from severe depression. She was subjected to cruel treatments, including electroshock therapy and lobotomies, until she died under mysterious circumstances. Today, Margaret's presence is felt in the asylum's decaying halls. Paranormal investigators claim that her spirit and those of the many others who died here still wander the dark corridors. The faint sounds of whispering, disembodied footsteps and the sensation of being touched by unseen hands are common reports from those brave enough to explore. Number 6 in the top is the Lemp Mansion, Lewis, Missouri. In the shadow of the empire, even wealth cannot escape the curse. The Lemp Mansion in St. Louis was once the grand home of the Lemp family, owners of the Lemp Brewery, one of the largest and most successful brewing operations in the country. But success is a fickle thing, and the Lemp family was plagued by a string of tragedies that led many to believe the mansion was cursed. The family's patriarch, John Lemp, was haunted by his own demons, and after the sudden death of his favorite son, he descended into madness. One by one, members of the Lemp family died under strange and often violent circumstances, leading many to speculate that something far darker than bad luck lingered in the mansion. The most famous ghost of the mansion is that of William Lemp Jr., who is said to haunt the upstairs rooms. Visitors report hearing heavy footsteps, doors slamming, and even the faint sound of a piano playing in the dead of night. The mansion is now a restaurant, but the spirits of the Lemp family are said to still linger, their presence felt in the chill of the air and the weight of their tragic history. The Myrtles Plantation in St. Francisville, Louisiana, is on number 5. Some plantations grow more than just crops, they grow curses. The Myrtles Plantation is a sprawling estate in Louisiana, but its beauty is marred by a legacy of tragedy and terror. Built in the 1700s, the plantation was the site of multiple deaths, many of them brutal and unexplained. The most famous story is that of Chloe, a slave who was accused of poisoning the family she worked for. Legend has it that Chloe's jealousy of her mistress led her to bake a poisoned cake for the family. The children died, and Chloe was hung by the other slaves in the yard as punishment. But even in death, Chloe's spirit could not be silenced. To this day, visitors to the Myrtles Plantation report seeing her ghostly figure wandering the grounds, her face obscured by a veil. Others claim to hear the faint sounds of children laughing or see strange lights flickering in the windows of the main house. At number 4, we have the Bell Witch Cave, Adams, Tennessee. Some spirits can't be silenced no matter how hard we try. The Bell Witch haunting is one of the most famous and terrifying paranormal legends in American history. In the early 1800s, the Bell family of Adams, Tennessee, became tormented by a mysterious entity known only as the Bell Witch. This poltergeist was said to torment the family for years, moving objects, making strange noises, and even physically attacking them. The witch's most terrifying encounter was with John Bell, the family patriarch. One night, as he lay in bed, he was reportedly strangled by the witch, gasping for breath until the entity finally released him. The haunting culminated in the death of John Bell, with the witch allegedly claiming responsibility. Today, the Bell Witch Cave is a popular site for paranormal investigators. The air inside the cave feels heavier than anywhere else, and many have reported hearing faint whispers or feeling cold fingers brushing their skin. At 3, we have Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The walls remember the screams. Eastern State Penitentiary was once one of the most famous and feared prisons in the United States. Built in the 1820s, the prison was designed to enforce solitary confinement, a practice that would ultimately drive many of its inmates to madness. The prison was home to notorious criminals, including Al Capone, but its most chilling aspect is the legacy of suffering it left behind. Many inmates never left the prison alive, and their suffering is said to have imprinted itself on the walls. Visitors have reported hearing the sounds of disembodied footsteps, seeing strange shadows moving through the cells, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. One of the most famous ghost stories is that of an unnamed prisoner who is said to appear in the shadows of the prison's crumbling corridors, his face twisted in agony from the horrors he endured. Number 2 in our top is the Whaley House, San Diego, California. A house built on death will never be free of it. The Whaley House is often called the most haunted house in America. Built in 1857 on the site of a former gallows, the house has been the site of multiple tragic events, including the suicides of family members and the violent death of a former occupant. Visitors to the Whaley House have reported hearing footsteps echoing through the halls, doors opening and closing on their own, and seeing the figures of men and women dressed in old-fashioned clothing. But the most famous ghost is that of Thomas Whaley himself, who is often seen in the doorway of the parlor, staring at those who dare to enter his home. First in our top is the Stanley Hotel, Estes Park, Colorado. Some places were never meant to be forgotten. At the top of the list, and perhaps the most famous haunted location in America, is the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado. This grand early 20th century hotel was the inspiration for Stephen King's The Shining, but its ghostly history stretches far beyond King's imagination. The hotel is home to the spirits of former guests and staff members, including the spirit of F.O. Stanley himself, who is often seen near the grand staircase still tending to his beloved hotel. The most famous ghosts are the playful spirits of 2 young children, who are said to wander the halls, their laughter echoing in the empty corridors. But the most chilling encounter is the music of a piano playing by itself in the ballroom. Guests who have stayed in the Stanley report hearing the music at night, even though the room is empty. The ghosts of the hotel are not just residual echoes, they are active and they don't want to be forgotten. The spirits may have faded into silence, but the stories never end. If you want to hear more chilling tales, uncover hidden histories, and explore the darkest corners of the world, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Your next haunting awaits. Join us for the journey.